Welcome to the CoinGeek weekly live stream. My name is Patrick Thompson, and I am once again the host because Kurt is out of office. I think he's feeling under the weather. Maybe he has a cold, but I'm hoping he gets well soon. And until he's back, you're stuck with me, so you better get used to it. So before we bring in today's guest, somebody who I'm super excited to talk to, let's take a look at a couple current events taking place in the blockchain and digital currency space. So right now, I'd say regulation is what we want to keep our eye on. It's taken place across the entire industry. You see financial regulators cracking down on Binance. You see financial regulators in the United States reaching out to some of these blockchain and digital currency companies located in places like BlockFi was contacted today because they're operating in New Jersey, and New Jersey's Attorney General is saying that they're doing an unregistered security sale with some of their products. Regulation it's become so big, the blockchain and digital currency industry, that financial regulators can no longer turn a blind eye to it. They need to start enforcing the regulatory frameworks that are in place and telling the companies that if they're not going to comply, they need to either stop operating or they just have to get with the program. So that's something that you want to watch. What else do we want to watch is the digital currency mining situation. Things have calmed down a bit. We've been hearing less news coming out of China about what's going on with the mining over there, or the crackdown, the ban, how miners have to get out of the country. But regardless, that's had a big impact on digital currency networks everywhere. Just today, Binance, they closed down their BSV mining pool. Now, I don't know how significant of an operation that was, but it's bound to have an effect. Something we want to keep our eye on is the hash rate on the BSV network, whether it drops off or what happens from here, and just the effect that, the ban that Binance put in place or the termination of their service is going to have. All right, I think I've done enough talking. So before we bring in our guest, who's Isaac Morehouse, the founder and CEO of Crash, I think Alex might have an ad for us to roll. So Alex, let's roll the ad. Isaac Morehouse, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. What do you have to pay to get an ad spot that long? That was like 3 minutes. That was incredible.
It was like a Super Bowl commercial, Like I didn't know what was going to happen next.
I know those spots are hot on this live stream. I have heard that the bidding is very fierce. So good to see you, man.
It's good to see you too. We haven't met in person before. I'm sure coronavirus played a little bit of a role in that, but we have emailed back and forth a bit. And, you're kind of everywhere online these days. I'm sure people have seen you on Streamanity. They've probably seen you on YouTube. They might have read about you on CoinGeek. So, but just for those who don't know, do you want to introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, you bet. So I am an entrepreneur. I run a company called Crash that I started about a little over 2 years ago. It actually spun out of a previous company I started called Praxis. I started back in 2013, which is a college alternative program. And I've just been really passionate about expanding human freedom, just people on the individual level, their ability to live life on their own terms. And so, I started Praxis as a way to just help people who didn't want to get stuck with college debt and wanted jobs that you don't really need a degree for, most of the kind of like startup jobs and things like that. And so, I've been in this entrepreneurial spot for almost a decade now, building companies, and I have been following Bitcoin since, I think I was trying to remember recently. I think the first time I ever heard about it was summer of 2011 at a conference. And then I finally got some in 2012. And, but just, been following it as an interest, as a hobby, as something that it ties into so many of the things that I'm excited about and passionate about. Obviously, breakthrough technology and startups and new business models and giving people, enhancing their individual freedom and autonomy, and then just the global impact. So in recent years, I've gotten more and more, since BSV branched off, I've gotten more and more into actually tinkering with it, doing some stuff with it besides just sort of reading, researching, talking about it. I've owned it and used it from very early age, or stage. But so I've been tinkering a lot and recording videos, talking about it with some other guys, the numpties. I'm like an early user of pretty much every application that comes up. I want to learn. I want to get my hands dirty. I've published all my books on Canonic and uploaded podcasts to Caster. And recently, and it was a very long lead in. The TLDR here is I'm an entrepreneur who's mostly, my day job is not building things in Bitcoin, is building a company that's not related to Bitcoin. But increasingly, I'm tinkering with stuff in Bitcoin. And I've been just recently starting to help out Libs. Aaron Russell goes by Libs, who's been developing stuff in Bitcoin for a good number of years, and through CHRONOLabs, where he's kind of spinning up fun products and stuff. I've been kind of helping him out with some stuff there, and that's been a lot of fun. It's let me kind of really get further into building in this ecosystem rather than just sort of using it as a consumer. So that's a way too long introduction.
No, that was perfect. But, that's one of the things that I find so interesting and unique about you is that, you are someone who successfully builds businesses outside of the Bitcoin ecosystem. Because, a lot of the time I feel like Bitcoin-oriented projects, they're kind of made by people who are already in the ecosystem, who are already have their eye on blockchain tech. So something that I'm wondering, is hearing more from your perspective about, what's it kind of like to have this outside experience? And now you're becoming more involved, more immersed in building out some Bitcoin businesses. But, what is that like as someone who's built businesses that weren't Bitcoin businesses? Then, you come into this space and like maybe at first it feels like pretty exclusive instead of inclusive. So like, what was your experience like there?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm always reticent to become like a member of a movement because I think it can very easily, you can lose the ability to think clearly and assess clearly. But I also I love the people working in the BSV space. And so trying to kind of come at it pragmatically, like, okay, let's see what this is all about. How does this protocol work? I'm here to actually use things and tinker with things and see what works, not to just believe something just so that I can be a part of a group, right? That we all get together and believe something together. That's been interesting. And I feel like, talking openly and asking questions and trying to learn. And so like, I'll go and try to just, if I see somebody doing something interesting, I'll just message them, be like, hey, tell me more. Why did you build this here? Why didn't you build it there? What are these? What are those? And just being curious. I've found that, this is a really interesting ecosystem. It's really great to be in a space so early where like nobody really knows exactly what this is going to be. Like we all know what's theoretically possible, but what it's going to be down the road, it's such an early stage that you get to have a lot of excitement and people are very open and generous, right? People are very willing to give you the time. I mean, you're bringing me on this live stream. I'm not a developer. I'm not a technical guy. I'm not, but like, because I've been openly curious, asking questions, tinkering, and just out there very actively, that's been really embraced. So that's kind of cool to see that. And then the second thing, running a business that's not built on Bitcoin, just sort of being an entrepreneur, coming in from sort of that spot, I think it helps you understand strategically the difference between a business and a missionary project. And not that there's anything wrong with a missionary project, but the idea of like, hey, let's build something on Bitcoin just because it's Bitcoin, not versus let's build something that solves people's problems. And if Bitcoin happens to make us solve that problem better, we'll use it. I think those are very different mindsets. And I think the former, it can be useful and it can be good to sort of probe the bounds of what's possible. And hey, let's just try to build a Bitcoin business because we love Bitcoin. And I've been trying to avoid that, right? I've loved Bitcoin for years. And I'm like, if I had a business that needed Bitcoin that I thought I was capable of building, I would build on Bitcoin. But I haven't for most of that time, right? Like Crash, there's nothing about doing it on Bitcoin that would make it better for customers. And I think trying to force that kind of ends up with like a lot of cheesy projects that end up dead in the water. It doesn't mean that it's not worth trying, but I keep trying to think, what are the things, the businesses, the problems that you can solve that need Bitcoin? Otherwise you can't do them. You can't do them on any other technology. And like, I want to find those business models. So bringing that pragmatic, like this has to make business sense mindset with me, I think has been really beneficial because it can kind of help you see the difference between what has a viable, what has a chance of being real in the long term versus what's kind of a play thing. You know what I mean?
No, for sure. And what you say is interesting there, because something I've heard some people say in the past is that like when you're solving a business problem, you're shooting straight, like you're looking to solve maybe this one area of the industry, or you introduce this solution to solve this problem somebody has in their life. Something I've heard people say in the past is maybe that when it comes to BSV or Bitcoin, people might have too broad of a focus. So I guess, here I'm wondering is, do you think there's any sort of application or maybe industry in particular that you see or have found BSV being a really good fit for and being something that it's, really able to solve for?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot over the last several years. And there's a great little book by Mike Maples called Building Breakthroughs. He's a venture capitalist and a really interesting guy. And he has this idea of backcasting where like you see into the future and you say, okay, I see a future with X that's totally different than the present. And then you work backwards from there to say, what can I be doing today so that when that future arrives, I'm positioned to win? And an example of this would be Netflix, where, hey, I see a future where we'll be able to stream videos online, but we can't today. The tech isn't here, but the rate things are going, it will be there. So what can I do now to position myself to win then? And Netflix was like, well, we could build a massive base of people who are Netflix customers and use us to get their videos so that when streaming is available, we'll win the streaming battle. How do we do that? We'll send them DVDs in the mail. Super weird, old tech, not very sexy, but they built this massive list and they kind of trained users to be like, oh, cool, I can keep a queue of videos. I can be more selective. They weren't trying to build a mail order DVD problem. They were trying to say, how can we get to the point? Because they saw the future coming. They saw the ability to stream full videos coming and they wanted to be positioned to win. And so when I think about what is that tech breakthrough, what is the tech breakthrough that Bitcoin brings that will make the future totally different than the present? And there are several of them. And I toyed around with a lot of the different attributes of Bitcoin to think about which one brings the biggest fundamental breakthrough. Is it a coin with limited supply? Is it a free market money that's not beholden to any government? Is it an investment asset? Or is it a cash substitute? Or is it a immutable ledger that data can decentralized storage of data? And I kind of whittled it down at first to two, like decentralized data and microtransactions, tiny, tiny, tiny transactions. And then over time, I whittled it down to one. Because I'm like, if I could really, the one breakthrough that I think you can really, really bank on being fundamentally a major shift that nothing else can compete with is microtransactions. Because there's too many unknowns with, like, maybe data will get pruned in the future. Maybe you will have to pay to access data that's been added to the blockchain. I don't know. There's some unknowns in that. But microtransactions, when we're talking 1,000th of a penny or 100ths of a penny, what that means the implications of that, just the ability to do that is unbelievably staggering. That is a massive, massive breakthrough. You think of the gap right now that exists between things you can get for free, right? Free with like ad models and whatever. And then there's things you can pay for. And those, like the lowest those go is like maybe $5 a month for like a subscription to Substack. They don't let you go any lower, or like a $5 purchase, or, you know, things like that. The gap between those, think of all of the business models that have never existed because that hasn't been possible. And it is possible now, and almost nobody knows it. And so thinking things that you literally can't do without BSV, microtransactions to me is where you got to think business models. Okay, now what kind of business models can be built around the fact that you can transact down to hundredths of a penny? That's where it gets really exciting. And I think we're so early, it's like we don't really know yet. We know the tech side, so we're tinkering with the product. But then it's like, what are the business models that make sense? And then what are the markets that those apply to? And so I want to like be early, getting a lot of at bats, right? Taking a lot of shots on goal and saying, well, let's play around with all kinds of different uses of microtransactions. So we get a lot of reps in and we can figure out which ones are going to be the biggest breakthroughs and will take off the fastest.
No, for sure. You know, I find that really unique about BSV as well, that never before have you been able to transact, even just, you know, sending and settling a penny from one account to another with a negligible transaction fee, and just the world of opportunities that opens up, just because, you know, we couldn't even experiment with business models because it wasn't possible to send data or whatever we're sending back and forth for such a low cost. And now, you know, to bring it back a little bit, and you say you're trying to take a lot of shots on goal, you're experimenting more and more with the technology. First, we have a question from Kurt. Maybe this will play into whatever I was going to say next. Kurt says, do you think micropayments are going to be big, get in the first? I need to read this again. I butchered that. Do you think micropayments are going to?
He butchered it. He butchered it. It wasn't you.
I've been deceived. So I think he's saying, do you think micropayments are going to get big in the first world or in the developing world? I don't know if it's in the long term or the short term, but maybe we can just build off that.
That's a really great question. It's funny when you think about, okay, so here's one business model, the marketplace model, very well-known model. And most marketplaces succeed or fail based entirely on network effects. Are they the ones to build the biggest network effect? So like Airbnb succeeds because you know that they're going to have the most listings, right? And if they have the most listings, they're going to get the most people that want to rent. And you got this chicken egg problem, of course. Who do you go get first, the suppliers or the consumers? But microtransactions, you think about the kind of marketplaces where you've got one side of users selling something, one side of users buying something, and all you're doing is giving them the platform to do it. Because of microtransactions, you can do a lot of things that don't rely entirely on network effect, but I think you will see between developed and less developed countries a difference in which side of that market benefits most. Okay, so let's take something like this is a business idea I had years ago, and I actually spun up a little beta of it, and I just never pursued it fully. But BSV makes it so much more interesting. Let's say you have articles that you are backing up in your queue, and you want to read them, but you don't have time to read them. But let's say you're traveling a lot, you're driving, whatever. You're like, man, I would love to be able to get an audio version of this. But to date, if you've ever tried to use like Pocket or any of these things that transcribe it with a robot, it's terrible. It's like unlistenable, and it's not very accurate. So let's say you could add it to a queue, like a Netflix queue. Oh, add this to my queue. I want this to be read by somebody in audio, and I'm willing to pay whatever, a penny a word, something like that, right? In order to have this read. There are people in sort of developed countries that I think will be willing to pay a few bucks, $5, whatever, to get that article read to them in audio form. But the people reading it, if you're only going to earn a couple bucks to read an article, most people in the developed world, that's not their opportunity cost is too high. But there are a lot of people who speak English good enough to read an article in another country who are like, if I can sit down for 10 minutes and read this article and send the recording to somebody for like a couple dollars, that's huge. That's worth it massively. So you think of like micro tasks that humans can do that have currently been for amounts that were too small to handle from a transaction processing standpoint. I think that opens up tons of possibility for the developing world, where just the opportunity cost is so much lower that earning a few cents or a few dollars actually matters to them. There's a lot of business models like that. But the consuming side of the market may come from the developing world. So in other words, I think what you may see is increased trade and exchange between people with a lot more capital and higher opportunity cost and those with less, just because the ability to transact at such tiny amounts is opened up. That's sort of one way that I've thought about it.
And I see another question here from N Snooze, and I think this will play into what I was going to say before. So I'm going to make it a two-part question. So N Snooze says, Bitcoin website builder. Most businesses make their own website using generic web builders, for example, Wix and Squarespace. Does that exist on BSV yet? It would make it easy to implement things possible with BSV. Now, what I would like to add with that is I know recently you joined forces with Aaron Russell, who many people know as Libs on Twitter. And I know you guys have quite a few different maybe projects, services, tools, resources that people could probably integrate into whatever they're building. So one, do you know of maybe this sort of toolkit that N Snooze mentions in her question? And two, can you tell us more about what you and Libs have been up to?
Yeah, so to that question, I definitely know. In fact, I started a Google sheet, just like I publicly shared it. I can't find it right now, but just to keep track of what are all the different active live things that are being built on BSV right now. And there's like a list of 50 right now, but one of them, I just saw it because you can Google, there's a CoinGeek article that mentions it. One of the winners of the Run Hackathon was somebody who built a micro site builder. So it's essentially like a single page, like a landing page builder, sort of, and I played around with it. It's pretty cool. You pay like $5 to build a site, and the site itself is hosted on chain. And then you pay like 10 cents every time you want to edit it. So, I got to change that copy. And it's very basic. You can do email sign-up forms, you can do images, you can do whatever, but a simple landing page builder. And I think that's pretty cool. I think there are a lot of areas where a monthly subscription doesn't make sense to people, but without the ability to make micropayments, it doesn't make sense for businesses to sell a one-off product. So like very few businesses are going to be able to sell you, build a landing page for 25 cents or edit it for 10 cents, right? That doesn't make sense for them. They're not able to do that. So they say, okay, we'll get a monthly subscription to Wix and it's $10 a month and you can do whatever. And you're like, well, all I want to do is build the page once and never edit it again. Do I have to keep paying every month? There's something cool in there. So I can't remember the name of it, but there is a builder there. In terms of CHRONOLabs, which is Lib's project, he came on Bitcoin's Got Talent and presented PayPresto, which is like this, it's in beta, but it's like a thing so that if you're building an app on BSV, you can accept payments from any BSV wallet. You don't have to pick one. You just use PayPresto, and your users can say, okay, I'm going to pay for this out of this wallet or this wallet or this wallet, whatever, right? That's kind of the idea. And I loved his presentation. I thought it was really interesting. And I'm, like I said, I'm trying to get to know everybody who's doing interesting stuff here because I'm very much in let me learn about this space mode. So we just started chatting, and he's working on some projects. And I was like, hey, I had some ideas for him as well. And we just kind of started, I kind of just started helping him out. I'm not a technical guy. I'm not a programmer, and he's an absolute whiz as a developer. But I just started helping him out with some stuff and trying to kind of like get a little momentum going on some of these things. And so there's sort of two parts to CHRONOLabs. One is just open source stuff that Libs creates all the time, different libraries and repos for builders on BSV. And he's got some incredible stuff that's used by Crypto Fights, uses TX Forge, which he created. I know, trying to think of who else. There's a handful of big players, big names I'm blanking on right now that use a lot of those repos. So one of the things I started helping with was sponsorships. Like, hey, you're creating all this open source stuff. Let's do a little sponsorship, so you can get a little cash to help pay for you to be able to keep doing some of this stuff. Because he's an entrepreneur as well. He has a business that he runs, and this is his side gig stuff. So if you go to chronoslabs.net/sponsor, you'll see it's a pretty cool thing. You can sponsor and get these really cool NFTs. We'll talk more about that in a minute because I want to pimp that a little bit and shill a little bit. But Aaron and I, so he created Bitpost, and I've got a lot of ideas of things that maybe could be done with Bitpost down the road. And then TLDR is a new little project that we put out, and it's in beta. Basically, we just want to make sure the tech is working, and then there's a lot of things we want to do. It's essentially a platform where you can create short summaries of any kind of content, and then people can pay a few cents to read those summaries if they're not sure if they want to invest all the time in watching a 3-hour Joe Rogan interview. Hey Presto, as I said, there's a lot ahead for PayPresto in terms of being the predominant thing that people can use to accept payments on their BSV app. Aaron spun up Shifty Nifty, which is the ability to do a encrypted and a genuinely private NFT, so that the owner is the only one who can see the data. And when you sell it, you're giving over the keys to decrypt that. Again, that's kind of a beta stage. These are all very beta stage, but we're trying to kind of move them forward a little bit at a time and see if we can get take a lot of swings and get a lot of bites at the apple. And I think that the lab model of because we're so early, let's say the fundamental ability to do microtransactions, let's build on that in as many ways as we can and try to see what sticks. I think that's really exciting to me. So that's a rambly. I had 2 cups of coffee today. I usually don't do caffeine or do like 1. So I'm like a little hyped up. I apologize for the.
It's all good. Sometimes you need the 2 cups of coffee. So, but let's say, I don't know if this was something that you want to touch on later. If it is, we could save it, or maybe you can touch on a little bit now. But like, if folks are looking to sponsor CHRONOLabs and really support you guys on your mission, I guess, how are things going in the sponsorship journey? How can they reach out to you? What does that look like from somebody sitting at home, sitting behind their desk who wants to help out and sponsor?
Oh, perfect. I'm so glad you're giving me the opportunity to full on shill, because this is actually really cool. I think it's really fun. So, so we're doing this little campaign. And if you go, as I mentioned, to CHRONOLabs.net, there's a little sponsor. You can go to /sponsor, or you can just click sponsor. We've got these really cool NFTs that were created, these little, and there are only 100 of each of the 5 for the various open source repos that Libs has put out there. And we started like, hey, let's create some really slick, nice NFTs. And we actually worked with Relay, and they updated some of their code so that we could enhance the way that these are displayed to have them be like really, really top quality. Let's say if people, because Libs just used to have, hey, if you want to sponsor, you can sponsor my work, thanks. And I was like, I think it was probably his idea. I don't want to pretend it was my idea. He's like, hey, I want to do an NFT or give these sponsors something unique. And I'm just the hype man. So if you sponsor, you get, some of these NFTs sent to you. And then I think it was Josh Hensley who was interviewing him in CoinGeek said like, well, would you do physical versions of these? And Libs was like, it's a good idea. Maybe we should set a goal, and if we hit it. And so I went and did some research on like how to make really cool like custom cards that could be physical versions of this. And we're like, hey, let's do it. So if we hit 7,500 pounds, because Libs is British, and I'm always like trying to do the conversion. I can never even figure out how to make the pound symbol on my keyboard. 7,500 pounds by August 1st. Everybody, because right now, if you sponsor, you get the digital card, but everybody who holds one of those digital cards will get a physical version sent to them as well. And to date, we're at 4,200. So we're over halfway there, and we have some awesome sponsors that are listed. A lot of names you'll recognize. CoinGeek, corporate sponsor, and they got a ultra rare as a corporate sponsor, an ultra rare, 1 of 10. There's only 10 ultra rare NFT. But you'll see a lot of names, a lot of just people that you see in the space. Josh Hensley, Kurt Wookert, we got Satoshi, a lot of, let me see here, Satchmo, just a whole bunch of people you can see them listed on sponsors have been like, yeah, cool, this is awesome, let's sponsor. So if you want to get in on that before August 1st and help us hit that goal, so you can get some physical NFTs, some provably rare. And it's pretty cool when you go click on the description in Relay X of these NFTs once you get them. They have fun little descriptions, but then there's also a link you can go to on the Chronos website where you can post in the contract number and you can actually verify that this NFT was created by Chronos and it is one of these rare NFTs. So that if somebody tries to, because that's one of the problems with NFTs, if somebody just does like a JPEG and lists their own, right, you want to make sure that it's provably rare. And so the ability to kind of do that is pretty cool. So if the only way to get one is to go sponsor on ChronosLabs.net. And then we'll send you the NFT on your RelayX wallet. And again, if we hit that goal, you'll be getting a physical NFT. So they're pretty awesome. Yeah, and in dollars, that's like $10,000 basically, and we're somewhere at like 6,000 right now.
I can never do the conversion from the Great British Pound, the Euro, whatever they use over there. I know me and you are both in the USA, so we're usually not bothered by that.
You know what? I got to vent for a second.
Do it.
I'm telling you, this is the craziest thing about British money. There's so many names for money and different denominations and things. Now, part of this is probably because I'm watching old period movies of Charles Dickens or whatever. And I don't know if some of these are antiquated terms that are no longer used, but like I was reading Sherlock Holmes last night, some bedtime reading. And I'm like asking my wife, how much is a guinea? What's a guinea? And then like pound, quid, a crown, a bob. Oh, half a bob, a pence, a penny. I don't know. Like what, there's so many, a shilling. There's so many names for money in England. I am utterly confused all the time.
No, I'm happy you got that off your chest because I'm sure, many other people located in the USA feel the same way as you feel. I see a message from the lovely Alex Moon saying some of those terms that you used were old, not used today, but I had the same problem as you. I don't know what a quid is. I don't know how much a pound is worth right now,
Yeah,
so.
send me half a crown, I don't know.
But to rewind just a little bit, you said it a couple times in our conversation that you're not an engineer, you're not a software developer, and neither am I. But that being said, I think there is a lot of valuable skills that people in our position can bring to a team where it is more engineer oriented. And I'm wondering because a lot of the people in the BSV ecosystem are engineers, so like I think they kind of tackle problems and business solutions and even marketing from that standpoint. But, I guess, especially as someone who's built businesses outside of Bitcoin and blockchain, like, what's kind of your view on, I guess, just of that, the value that, can be found in somebody who is doing business development, somebody who is doing marketing, who doesn't come from the world of blockchain and digital currency, or maybe a better way to put it is just like, how can these engineers sort of add value to their team in a way that isn't all technical, and what's the value in bringing team members like that into their little squad?
Yeah, it is challenging at this early stage if you're not technical, because you'll see these conversations where people are like, I'm really excited about the possibility of BSV. I'm worried about this, or I think things should be done this way. And then people will be like, well, go build it yourself, right? And if you're like, but I don't know how to code, I don't know what to do. Is the only option holding and shit posting on Twitch? I don't know. How else do I help this thing go? I think we're very quickly moving into a phase where non-technical skills will increase in importance and in value. So I kind of see it as like phase one is like tinkering. What do we have here? Let's just tinker with the fundamental technology and just learn what it's capable of. And that's primarily people who are directly able to do that. Phase two is, okay, it doesn't matter what it can do if that can't be turned into a business model. So people who understand business models, sometimes those are developers and technical people who have those skills as well. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes people who are really good at building stuff are not very good at building things that can sell or that can be a sustainable business. And so being able to say, hey, I kind of understand business models, and I can sort of try to help focus your skill at tinkering on something that is going to have, because like not all tech is the same, right? You can have 10x higher return tinkering on one thing than something else, or changing your business model. And sometimes those who are the best at pushing the bounds of tech are not the best at figuring out how to make a viable business out of that. So I think we're entering into that phase. We're in the early stages of that phase where non-technical skills matter, right? Identifying niche markets, identifying how to focus a product, identifying how to, figure out, form those relationships, just grunt work of sales and marketing, going in and finding who are the customers, getting out of the building, as they say, talking with them, learning what would solve their pain points. I think that the ecosystem is early in that space. So what I've done is like realize that I think there's a lot of interesting possibility because of Bitcoin, but that since I'm not a developer, I don't know how to, directly contribute right away. So what can I do? I can just continually use it as both a consumer and a creator. So like, okay, cool. I'll create videos on Streamanity. I'll spin up a creator token and experiment. Be like, okay, the numpties will be the first to have a revenue share token. Let's see how that goes. I'll publish books on Canonic and see what that's like. Do an NFT of a book. I'll help Aaron try to raise money with his NFTs for Chronos, and just get my hands dirty talking to people and trying to do things directly, so I can experience what it's like to get the money coming in when someone buys a video, or to see, like this question about pricing on Streamanity, to see firsthand by testing.
Let's go for it right there. As you bring up the video, Isaac, for an influencer looking at earning Bitcoin, how would you price videos on Streamanity? Part two of the question, to get a mix of revenue and views. Yeah,
it's funny right now. Right now, I kind of feel like on Streamanity, the price is not super important. Like there's the market is not very price elastic or I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've done they're not very responsive to changes in price. So you got to change it quite a bit. It's you either have something that the niche audience who's on Streamanity is interested in hearing, or you don't, right? So there's not very many people today that have BSV in a wallet and know how to use it on Streamanity and even hear about videos that are on Streamanity. It's very early. If you have a video that's interesting to the 1,000 people that fit the demographic of people browsing Streamanity for interesting videos, they're not going to, I've noticed, they don't care that much if it's 20 cents or $1. If it's maybe somewhere within a penny to a couple dollars, the difference in views is not going to fluctuate all that much. Now, if you go up to $5 or $10, it's going to drop off pretty quickly. But I've just noticed that, like, if it's anything more than a penny, the kind of person who's like, I really want to watch that video and see what this person has to say, they're not that sensitive between the difference of 50 cents and $1. At least that's what I've seen so far. Now, again, our videos typically get 100 views. I think the highest viewed one maybe had like 150 or 200 views. Sometimes they get 50 or 70 views, and we're charging $2. But I think that's because people were already interested in watching the four of us chat beforehand, and they're not going to Streamanity to discover new content. They're going there if there's content they already like that can only be found there. At least that's where we are today.
That's pretty interesting, because I feel like when a lot of Bitcoin businesses start out, I want to call it the chicken and egg problem. Hopefully I'm using that right. We're like, maybe they're coming to Streamanity for Isaac. Maybe it's not like they're coming to Streamanity to explore it and find the new content, but like, no, people already like you. You're a likable guy. They wanted to go on there and, view the content that you're making. So I guess something I'm wondering is, when people talk about onboarding newcomers to Bitcoin, they sometimes say like, hey, you know what, maybe you want to get on Streamanity, upload a video, and maybe you could start earning a little bit of revenue like that compared to YouTube. Or maybe they say like, hey, you know what, you should get on Twitch, put your first post out there, you can start earning Bitcoin. I'm wondering, what do you think is one of the best ways to onboard a newcomer, somebody who knows nothing about Bitcoin, into the BSV ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, again, this gets back to the two different approaches. One is the missionary approach, where I'm just going to try to beg and convince you to use BSV just because BSV is theoretically very interesting. And that's very hard. And that's kind of the approach that I think a lot of coins, BCH or even BTC, have predominantly taken, which is like, we want to get you to use this because you believe in the ideology behind it. You have to be like a true believer, and then you'll be willing to use it even if using it isn't necessary for you to have a fun and productive day. It's like it's like, ask what you can do for BSV, not what BSV can do for you, right? That kind of mentality, which again, you need a little bit of that to bootstrap. I mean, the BTC, the Bitcoin network at the early days, was bootstrapped by people who weren't gaining anything Like it was, they weren't gaining convenience or money at first, but they knew that it had potential. So I'm not saying that that's never appropriate, but I think if you can ask yourself, and this is what I'm constantly trying to do, and I haven't cracked it, but what are things that people actually want to do, that they actually value, that they can't do, or they can't do without BSV, or that they can do with a 10x better experience on BSV? So that if they do it, the first time they do it, they'll say, whoa, this is great. This made my life better. I want to keep using it, right? You think about when Uber and Lyft first came out. If you're like, check it out. You can just pull this thing up. You can request a car. You can see right when they arrive. You don't even need to have money and cash and credit with you. Like all the things that are inconvenient about a taxi. The minute you use it the first time, you're like, this is 10x better than a taxi. I'm in. You don't care about the theory of ride sharing and marketplaces and all this other stuff philosophically. It just made your life better the first time you used it. And so what are the things that can do that? And I think one of the challenges for BSV is it's very easy to answer that question on the creator side. You can give creators things that they can't get anywhere else. The ease of monetization and the granularity with which you can charge, small, tiny amounts and all this kind of stuff. Huge advantages, even having the data stored on chain instead of elsewhere where, if you're deplatformed, it's still there. But for the consumers, it's not there yet. It's like, well, it's just easier to watch a video on YouTube. Why would I go to Streamanity? Because then I got to go get a wallet, get money somehow, which is almost impossible because of AML KYC laws. I can't just pop it in real quick. And then I'm just paying for a video that I was getting for free. So my life isn't getting any better, right? Like it's very hard. So thinking about what are the models where you give people something they literally couldn't get without you. And that's where I think the crypto fights is the most interesting currently, where it appears to be doing that. And I've played around with it once myself. I'm not a gamer. I have no idea what I'm doing. It felt way like over my head, Renaissance fair nerd stuff, but it was, it's a beautiful experience aesthetically, but it seems like people are like, I don't care about Bitcoin. I care about this game. This game is interesting to me. And if I have to use Bitcoin to use it, great. I'll use Bitcoin because I want to play this game. And now all of a sudden they're using Bitcoin, not because they have a religious belief in Bitcoin, but because they want to do that thing. It helps them get what they want. Any business that can do that, any app that can do that is, I think, where the big wins are going to come.
And, I guess continuing on that point just a tiny bit, and I've said this a couple times throughout our conversation, but, you're someone who has successfully built businesses outside of Bitcoin. So I'm wondering if you have any sort of advice to up and coming Bitcoin businesses who are, they're trying to be successful. Of course, they started their business. They're looking to provide a solution. They want to be successful. But do you have any experience or advice, or maybe even something that you would want to change about Bitcoin that could help them? Just that will help them in their journey and their mission to launching this successful company that they hope to launch.
Yeah, if I had a surefire path to success, if I had a piece of advice that was guaranteed to help you win, I'd probably be a lot more successful than I am right now. So I can't give you any silver bullets, but I think some general mindsets that have been useful to me are especially early on, focus on one customer, one real customer, right? So if you're building something and you're imagining that it's going to solve a lot of problems for a lot of people, that's kind of too big, right? So start with, well, let me go find one person who can't live without what I'm building, and let me actually get them. And if you have an app that one person uses religiously every single day, and they're like, this is the greatest thing ever, it makes my life better, I think you are miles ahead of someone that has an app that 1,000 people jump on and tinker with one time and then leave and never come back. So who is that one person, right? And what can you do to understand what would make them, who's your ideal customer, envision them, and think of a real person who fits the bill, and then go ask them, here, try it, use it. And then if they don't use it, ask them why. Well, you're my ideal customer. If I can't even get you to use it, how am I going to get anyone else to use it? Let me understand, why are you not using it? What's keeping you? I want to really get in the head of that person, as they say in the startup world, get outside of the building, talk to the customers, understand what do they want, what would make them go, holy shit, right? This is incredible. I'm going to use this every day. And really, really force yourself to be disciplined, to not stop until you have one real person who really does say, holy shit, I love this thing, and they use it every day. That's so much more important to go in that direction, because I have gone the other direction many, many times and suffered for it, of like, well, I'm going to help a whole ton of people in a whole bunch of ways. It can do a ton of things, right? Like if you have more than one value prop, you don't have a value prop. If your market is more than a tiny niche of people, you don't have a market. You got to start out so tight with a very tight wedge, and you can build on that and you can expand. But again, and this is what's neat about this early phase of the ecosystem, because there are a few thousand people that are in love with BSV and using it any day and who will try out any new app. You get a chance to say, and I'm not saying this is the only approach, but you get a chance to say, if I can build something, if I can't even get people who are predisposed to love BSV to use my product every day, then how am I ever going to get anybody else to use it, right? Now, it's possible that you have a different product that has a different market, but I think just starting with that, like, who's somebody that can I solve one person's problem such that they'll pay me to do it? I found that to be really helpful.
No, nicely put. And it looks like we have a question from the audience here from Joseph Mallory 3. He is saying, I think it might be a two-parter, is creating licensure for the libraries and giving a percentage of the proceeds through a contract to the NFT holders not feasible for these early developers to get more sponsorship?
Okay, what was the first part again? To create it, was it a revenue share?
So yeah, let me.
Okay.
Yeah, is creating licensure for the libraries and giving a percentage of the proceeds through a contract to the NFT, and then like the holders.
Yeah. I mean, all of that I believe is technically possible. Here's my guess, and I'm just shooting from the hip here. I'm guessing that at current levels, the work required to set that up and make an NFT that shares the proceeds and whatever would not be worth it given the small amounts that we're talking about. Now, with Chronos in particular, for this fundraiser, it's specifically for open source projects. So these are unlicensed. These are not, nobody's paying to use them. They're tools for builders on BSV shared in an open source way. And that's kind of the whole idea of saying, hey, sponsor us. You get an NFT, but you'll also empower builders to use BSV, because I think a rich and healthy ecosystem has a combination of open source projects that are shared generously and closed source stuff that is charged license. Like everybody wants to, you want profit seeking, right? You're not going to win long term if it's all just charity open source work, but you also want an ecosystem where there is a lot of openness and sharing and generosity. That's a sign that you're healthy and that you're unthreatened, because if your main business model is strong enough, you don't have to worry about trying to nickel and dime people on every little side thing that you do. Oh, someone wants to use our logo. Let's send them a bill for $5, right? If you're operating a successful business, you don't think that way. You think bigger about the real leverage point. So in this case, we're doing raising money for these completely open source tools that anybody can use for free. But I love the idea, and I'm playing around a lot with this, of revenue share models in everything, whether that's baked into a token or not. But so like, say you need capital rather than the traditional equity or debt instrument to say, we're essentially selling future revenue shares, securitizing them and saying, let's take money now. And the people who give us that money now are buying a percentage of revenue that's generated by this product for a certain amount of time. And I think there's a lot of cool things you can do with that. So yes, I think that's a great idea. I think that's possible. I don't know that it's ideal for what we're currently doing, at least in Chronos.
Now, I'm staying conscious of time here. We have about 10 minutes left, but before we really begin to wrap it up, I'm going to hit on the quick question from Kurt. Maybe you could talk about your Twitch hat for a minute or two. So he's saying, Isaac, how much for that Twitch hat? So can you tell us a little bit about your very rare Twitch hat?
Yeah, it's 4 and 10 penny, half a crown, 6 pence and a bob is what I'll charge. No,
£2 for shipping.
Yes, exactly. And a guinea. No, so the hat, this is a very unique hat, because you will notice there is no number on the hat. I would just happen to be on Twitch one day. Well, I'm on Twitch every day, so it wasn't that rare of a thing. And I saw it was like I don't know, like or comment or something, and we're going to do a giveaway to one random person who comments on this. And so I just commented along with 100 other people. And then it was like, congratulations, Isaac Morehouse has won the prize. And it was a hat. And I think the Twitch guys ordered like a handful of hats to see if they liked them as like prototypes or whatever before they did the hat NFT. And I think they had a few for themselves as team members, and then they just decided to give one away on Twitch. And I happened to get it, and they sent it to me, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then it was like a month later that this hat NFT thing dropped. And I was wearing this in a Numpties video right before that. And there was a bunch of people who were like, this is bullshit. There's some insider stuff going. How did Isaac get one beforehand? He jumped. It was like, this was a pre-mined hat, in other words. So yeah, that's the story, and it's not for sale.
Very rare. And you know what? I said I was going to have a last audience question, but this one's pretty interesting. So I'm going to get to it too. This is from Harry and Financially Solvent. What a name. So why would World of Warcraft put all of their game currency on chain and track each item by its token, transaction ID, etc.? Now, I guess the only thing I'm wondering on my end is like the way I think I'm interpreting this question. Is it something World of Warcraft has already done? Or are we just talking about this in a gaming context? Let's go from there.
Honestly, I don't know how to answer that question. If it's why would they want to do that, I'm not sure I exactly understand what it is that we're talking about having them do. Like, I guess from a very high level, I'll talk about what I do think I can talk about. From a very high level, the idea of what people already do in video games, buy items and earn gems and gold and whatever other in-game things, the idea of having that directly connected to on a public ledger where you can, for one, maybe reduce fraud and whatever, but having it connected to a real world currency where you can take that and it can be interoperable between different games. Where your coins earned in one game can buy you something in a different game, or doing things like Crypto Fights is doing, if I'm understanding it correctly, where items that you have there, you can sell on a marketplace to other users there, and not just have in-game currency, but have that actually liquid, right? Where you can sell that currency. And I think people have been doing this for years, from things like Half-Life or Second Life, whatever, going way back. But it's been very awkward. It's been kind of manually like, hey, PayPal me $50 and I'll send you. I don't even know how you do it if the games enable it. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But making all that baked in from the start, I think is really, really attractive for a lot of reasons.
So I'm going to ask one last question before we wrap it up and we let you go, Isaac. So I'm just wondering, if there was one sort of general takeaway that you would want the audience to walk away knowing about Isaac Morehouse, the work you do and the business you're building with Crash, the stuff you're working on with Aaron over at CHRONOLabs, and maybe just Bitcoin and business in general, what would that general takeaway be?
Yeah, man, the whole ethos of what I've been doing for the last decade or so, and it's what Crash is all about, it's what Prax is all about, the idea of you don't need anyone's permission. You don't need any special, third-party stamp of approval in order to do the things you want to do. You can sort of, be your own credential, write your own ticket. That applies very much in this Bitcoin space as well, right? So like with Crash, we're helping people on the job hunt who have no connections be able to get jobs that are phenomenal that they didn't think they could get unless they had some sort of insider connections or whatever. By basically showing proof of work, really, by demonstrating skill through tangible, like if I message you and say, hey, I made this for you. I want to work for you in marketing. I made this landing page for you. What that demonstrates speaks so much more than a static list of like third-party credentials or permission slips, or versus me getting in line, applying on Indeed, hoping for the best, waiting for you to send me an email back, right? Like that whole mindset, you don't need any of that. You don't need to wait for permission. You don't need to wait until. And so when it comes to BSV and building things in BSV or whatever, it's the same approach. Just start tinkering. Just start getting your hands dirty. Start messing around with it. Like don't sit around and wait until you have the perfect idea or the perfect way to go about it. Start messing around with it now. Like in the very least, Start blogging every day. Go post a Bitpost every day. Your thoughts on the ecosystem, reviews of applications you do. I mean, the ecosystem's so small now. If you go use every single BSV app, every day you use one app for 30 minutes and you go write a short summary of your experience and post it up to Bitpost and you share it and you tag them on Twitter and on Twitch. Do that for 30 days. We're talking like half an hour a day for 30 days. I guarantee you that is going to open up a ton of interesting conversations. People are going to be coming to you. They're going to be asking you to try their app, right? Because we're so early, you can like become valuable and opportunities will start to find you if you don't just sit on the sideline and wait and think and wait until you're ready or until the ecosystem is ready. Like just start now, just experiment now. That's kind of my overall, word of exhortation.
No, that's nicely put. It's a good message, and it would be really great to see more people tinkering around and all the different apps and services that exist, some of the tools and resources, dabbling in there. And I think you're right. I think an immense amount of value could be added if they were to write about it. I feel like that would be an interesting challenge. Maybe there'd be some way to put that into some sort of challenge, and maybe something unique could come out of that. But I think that's really good advice. I hope someone takes it and follows it, and it would be great to read all those bit posts, see what they learned, see how they used it, and just see what their general feedback message on those things is.
You just gave me a great idea, Patrick. I know we got to wrap up, but first, before we go, everybody go to CHRONOLabs.net and go sponsor and claim some of those NFTs. You just gave me an interesting idea. Maybe I'll see if I can do this. For years, I've had, and Praxis has this as part of its curriculum, but I've given people a 30-day blogging challenge where, like, to me, the lowest hanging fruit for personal growth and career growth and opening opportunities is just blogging every day regularly. Doesn't matter if people read it, what it does for you, the act of making yourself publish something every single day for 30 days. I have never had somebody actually do that and not be utterly transformed and say this was incredible. So what if I did something like, we're going to do this challenge, and anybody who blogs every day for 30 days, and we can prove it because it'll be on chain on Bitpost or whatever, earns like a token or an NFT or some limited, like it's like an award for this check. Because I guarantee you, no matter how many people think they're going to do it, nobody's going to do it. It's super easy, but nobody does it. People run away. But if you do it, I don't know, maybe we should come up with something like that.
No, for sure. I'd like to support that in any way, and I think it's a really good and interesting challenge. It's funny you say that nobody would really do it, because it reminds me of, people say, oh, you write a page every day, you have a book in a year. It's one of those easier said than done kind of things. But, I would love to see someone take on the challenge. I want to support this in any way. So, I'd like to see that idea built out. Like, let's see if it becomes something. That would be really nice.
Yeah, so it's just one more thing for me to shill. I'm shilling Numpty videos and Numpty coin. I'm shilling my books on Canonic, which you should go buy. I'm shilling for, the sponsors. I'm just like a shill full time now, but I'm not even getting paid for it. Something's wrong here,
No, it's good. It's good. I think the more people are aware of, the more tools and resources people have to learn from, or even just dabble with, the better. So, I'm not going to call it a shill, but definitely check out all the different app services, sponsorship opportunities that Isaac mentioned today.
DM me anytime as well. Thanks for having me on, man.
Thanks for coming here, man. I really appreciate it. We're going to let you go here, and I'm going to wrap up the show. All right. Well, I don't have a bona fide sign-off message, but I would like to thank everyone who tuned in today, everyone who came for Kurt but got me instead. I'm sorry, but you have to deal with it. And, I really just appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hop on and hear Isaac talk, because he had a lot of really good advice. He had a really good message. And I do think more people need to get out there and just dabble in the apps and services. Even if you're not a software developer, you can play around with different things. You can write about different things. And there's ways to add value without being an engineer or being a software developer or being technical. And I think Isaac gives some really good insight on how you can make that possible. So just one more thank you to Isaac for taking the time to hop on today. This is another episode of the CoinGeek Weekly live stream. I am your host, Patrick Thompson. I'm not Kurt Wickert Jr. Maybe he'll be back next week. Maybe he won't be. So I guess it'll be a surprise to see who's the host next week. I think, Alex, maybe we usually do like an advertisement to end it. Is that what happens here? If it is, you should roll it. If not, maybe we're just done. So let's see what happens. Thank you.